game of Washington to the deep state to the tech elites, right? Like that's essentially her argument. Her argument that, you always heard from the populace, from the MAGA populace, one common critique was that there was this uniparty in Washington. Democrats and Republicans might disagree on certain issues, but at the end they were on the side of the rich, they were on the side of the, military and the security state, and they were on the side of corporations. They weren't on the side of you. Well, now Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that's Donald Trump. He had promised you that he was going to be different. He's going to be an outsider that was going to go after those institutions, but he's been co-opted by them, and he likes partying with them. So she didn't use him by name, but like in the statement, that's very clear what she's talking about, and that is powerful, and that is very different from the other people that have separated from Donald Trump in the past, because she's coming at him from the place of his core base of support and his core strength. And if even 5% of the MAGA base agree with her, if more do, even better. But like if even 5% or 10% agree with her, that is crippling to Donald Trump's power. That is the first time that he would actually lose the people that powered his rise. And so in that sense, I think it was a powerful resignation statement. I think probably would have been more powerful if she was making that argument from within the halls of Congress. But the interesting thing to watch will be if other people start to echo that message.
Tim, are we burying the lead here? She speaks about it as a foregone conclusion that Democrats take over the House and that Trump is impeached.
Well, the impeachment would end up being I think, a political judgment by the Democrats, but we probably are burying the lead as far as a lot of Republicans on the Hill have already basically conceded the midterms. And there's super interesting reporting today from Punchbowl DC, which is kind of a Capitol Hill insider outlet. And basically a number of Republicans were calling them after Marjorie Taylor Greene's letter came out saying, essentially, I might not agree with her on all the particulars, and she might have these, various unique issues, but like the core of her argument is correct. But like, we are doing nothing. We are not serving people. We are about to be in the minority, and I'm annoyed too. And essentially that was the message. So there were that there will be maybe more Republican retirements coming because Republicans on the Hill see the writing on the wall that the Democrats are going to win next year. And it's worth it to stay in Congress, even if you're in the minority, if you feel like you're fighting for something, if you feel like you're doing something. And I think that a lot of Republicans on the Hill don't feel like they're doing anything. They're just ornamentation to Donald Trump's authoritarian takeover. And if it's going to be another one-year slog to their own defeat, well, then maybe others will follow her to the exits. That was what Punchbowl is reporting, and that I think seems like a reasonable assessment of where we are. Things could change, obviously, but I think that things are looking very bad politically for the Republicans on the Hill.
Here's that Punchbowl reporting, Molly. Quote, more explosive early resignations are coming. It's a tinderbox. Morale has never been lower. Mike Johnson will be stripped of his gavel, and they will lose the majority before this term is out.
Yeah, what I think is so interesting about this is, like, House Republicans gave up their power. They said, they let Donald Trump do what he wanted to do with the pocket rescissions. They let Russ Vaughn take away the power of the purse. Like, they went along with all of this. They acquiesced again and again and again. And now they're salty because he did what they let him do. Like,
you know what they're like? They're like those prisoners who, when they go in to rescue them, the rescuers are like, the door wasn't locked.
Yeah.
Like, they could get out of their political prison today.
At any time. And that's what I don't understand. It's
they're
like
so lame.
It is. And Mike Johnson, by the way, Donald Trump installed Mike Johnson because he was willing to just go along with anything. And now they're like, well, he's not so good at politics because, they're passing all of these.
It's not even Mike Johnson isn't so good at having a spine. Right. Mike Johnson goes on a podcast and says, yeah, I think they should release the Epstein files. Donald Trump, burps or belches at him the wrong way. He shuts down Congress. That doesn't look strong. That doesn't help anybody. In the end, it doesn't even help Donald Trump, who signs legislation to release the Epstein files.
I mean, the reason Mike Johnson has that job is because Donald Trump felt that he would serve his purpose.
But why not have someone that has the job? I mean, I don't want them to do anything that is more popular than the things that are so unpopular that Marjorie Taylor Greene made a video saying we're going to be in the minority and Trump will be impeached. Yeah. But the idea that they have to be this lame and impotent, they have chosen to be lame and impotent.
Oh, no question. And a great example of this is the discharge petitions, right? Now, another discharge petition is coming. These are signs that the Speaker of the House is not controlling the ship. The fact that these discharge petitions, these bipartisan discharge petitions are moving along to him is a sign that he can't control the Congress. And And look, just the idea that they're victims of Donald Trump, when in fact they are technically, I mean, they've sort of given it up, but they're technically a co-equal branch.
I mean, it all ties together. We started the last hour with Jim Comey talking about how the judiciary is the only leg of a three-legged stool that still functions. And that's true. But I feel like everyone is nodding along like that's how it has to be. That's not how it has to be at all. I mean, there could be people in Congress who decide to do their jobs on tariffs, on the Pentagon, on the Department of Justice. They could impeach any one of those cabinet officials. What is your sense of what the people of Georgia want on inflation, on the economy, on the military?
Yeah, look, people are frustrated. They're worried about the economy. We had an election in Georgia just a few weeks ago where Democrats flipped 2 Public Service Commission seats, and they won by 26 points.
Jesus.
Now, we figured Democrats would win that seat, but 26 points was a rout, right? And the common theme was affordability. Every Republican candidate for governor and every Democratic candidate for governor all said the same thing. This election was a referendum on affordability. They have very different views of what affordability means, but people are upset about the direction of the country and the way things are going, and they want change. Now, House Republicans could bring about that change, and maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene's decision, which, by the way, comes after she did not even tell House leadership that she was stepping down. Mm-hmm. And so that erodes their power even that much more, and they're clinging to an even thinner margin of control. But maybe that is one of the biggest, when we look back at this in a year, it could be one of the biggest seismic fractures in the MAGA movement and in the U.S. House.
I mean, Tim, I know we've had this conversation about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you and I are sort of,